Do you guys remember how Khamzat Chimaev just kind of sucks? Like he's not great. Like, there used to be a lot of hype for the guy, and for good reason, but since then it's just fallen off. I mean, the guy really did not live up to his potential. He used to fight like 3 times in a month. Now he's fighting maybe once a year. He keeps pulling out. He has a baby bitch immune system. He barely scraped by against a welterweight, moving up in weight on 5 days' notice. The hype's just not there anymore. It's just not quite what it used to be. People are making hour-long videos talking about how Khamzat's entire career has been derailed, and he didn't live up to what he was supposed to. And he's just not great. He's just not as good as we thought. You guys remember that? Because I remember that. And holy shit, did that all change really, really quickly. I mean, Khamzat Chimaev just ran through Robert Whittaker, and I'll be honest, I did not see that coming. I just frankly did not see that coming. Look, not to quote Anthony Smith or anything, but you look on paper at the competition Robert Whittaker has faced. I mean, look, if it wasn't for Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker would have potentially been seen as the greatest middleweight of all time. Apart from Adesanya, he beat everybody up until, the Dricus du Plessis fight. But it's not even that. I mean, Robert Whittaker contended with Yoel Romero, who arguably is the most decorated wrestler the sport has ever seen. I mean, Olympic silver medalist in wrestling. And Robert Whittaker's takedown defense in that fight was beyond solid. It was beyond solid to a point that Yoel Romero, in their rematch, didn't even try to take Whittaker down. He just didn't even try. He's like, okay, there's no point. This guy is too fucking hard to take down. And remember that time that Robert Whittaker fought an ADCC champion in Jacare Souza, and he defended the back takes beautifully, just never let Jacare get into a dominant position despite having the opportunity at times. When you look at Khamzat Chimaev is not the wrestler Yoel Romero is. He's not the jiu-jitsu specialist that Jacare Souza is. And, on the feet, you would say, well, Robert Whittaker is going to be far more skilled. So there you go. Right, there you go. But Khamzat Chimaev, look, the thing we learned from that fight against Robert Whittaker, it's true, he's not the wrestler Yoel Romero is. He's not the grappler that Jacare Souza is, but he puts it together better than maybe anybody ever has in the UFC ever. Right? Ever. I mean, who's he in competition with in that regard? Khabib? I mean, okay, Khabib never fought somebody to the level of Robert Whittaker, and also Khabib didn't have the pure wrestling that Khamzat Chimaev does. Yeah, look, on the ground itself, Khabib was clearly a fucking problem, but Khamzat Chimaev is a problem on the ground, but his pure wrestling is way better than Khabib's is. Which, I mean, I'd fucking hope so. Khamzat actually wrestled. He competed in the sport of wrestling while Khabib never has. Dude, the double leg he shot on Robert Whittaker, I've never seen a double leg be faster. He has the fastest double leg I have ever seen in the UFC. But with all of this being said, though, when you look at the finishing sequence, things get really, really interesting. I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of small details here we need to look at, but we're going to get into it. When you look at the very first shot that Khamzat took, one thing we looked at in the breakdown about how Whittaker's takedown defense is so good is the fact that he keeps both of his arms down. And what this allows him to do is get underhooks early, which is very, very important to stuffing takedowns. But he got the underhook here. I mean, he got the underhook, but Khamzat shot so low that Whittaker could not hike it up. I mean, it was too fast. It was way too low. And because Whittaker was up against the fence, I mean, he couldn't sprawl here. He couldn't sprawl, so he had to fully rely on the underhook. But Khamzat, again, was just way too low to actually use it and hike up his arm. So, I mean, he gets taken down. And the first thing you notice is Khamzat had a strength advantage here. I mean, it was a big question mark we had going into this matchup was, look, Khamzat, he was dragging welterweights around, but is he going to have that same strength advantage at 185? I mean, that's a 15-pound difference. But, I mean, he absolutely did. Robert Whittaker gets back up and grabs a whizzer, but Khamzat basically lifts him up and then shucks to the back. Now, the whizzer was not deep enough to prevent Khamzat from getting to his back, so Whittaker had to let it go, and then Khamzat just immediately mat returns him. And from there, Khamzat just keeps threatening with the back takes. He keeps throwing that top hook in, and you see Whittaker keeps doing the same little escape he did to Jacare Souza, driving his leg up and around to escape the hook. But the problem is he could never shake Khamzat off of the body lock. Khamzat had a seatbelt grip on Whittaker, and he really could not escape. No matter what he did, Khamzat was on his back, and he just kept threatening the back take. All while at the same time, Khamzat is keeping his head higher than Whittaker's, making him carry his weight, and that is what is preventing Whittaker from just standing back up. But again, look, here's the crazy thing about all of this. Whittaker's defense was still on point. I mean, look, Khamzat, he's threatening the back take. He only has one hook in. Khamzat rolls through all the way in order to get his second hook in and fully secure the back take. But Whittaker does an amazing job getting one hook out, scrambling, turning away to fully escape the position, right? I mean, he fully defended it. But then that fucking reshot by Khamzat, again, it is so fast. And when they're up against the fence, Whittaker, he cannot sprawl. And with how low he's getting, this is borderline undefendable. I mean, I don't know what you do about it. But from there, the same kind of game keeps happening. Khamzat keeps threatening a single hook. He's staying on Whittaker's back until we get to the finishing sequence, right? Khamzat is hand fighting this entire time. He pushes one of Whittaker's arms down to fully get his arm across Whittaker's face. And now again, like I said earlier, this is where it gets fascinating. Because, look, the chokehold that Khamzat has here is 100% legitimate. Again, you know, I go back to Dominic Cruz when you go to the Robbie Lawler, Ben Askren fight. Dominic Cruz spreaded a lot of misinformation during that fight. He was adamant that, no. A choke over the chin does not choke. It only hurts. He is 1,000% wrong. I mean, he's just fucking dead wrong. He didn't know what he was talking about. I don't know where he got that information from, but you will 100% go to sleep from a choke that is over your chin. 100%. Now, typically, the tap will come before you go to sleep, but if you just try to fight it, you're going to go to sleep. Now, here's the heavy caveat, though. Typically, you need this choke fully sunk in, 100%. You either need that fulcrum grip or you need the hand behind the head. Khamzat didn't have that. Khamzat had the hand on top of the head, which is not typically ideal for this position. But here's the bigger thing, right? Khamzat did not fully have his back. He didn't. He only had one hook in. From this position right here, Robert Whittaker should have been able to turn into him. He would have ended up flat on his back, but he would have escaped this position because Khamzat does not have both of his hooks in. But again, the second Khamzat slapped this choke on, Whittaker was panic tapping immediately because of the teeth. Now, Whittaker has said, you know, he had surgery on the bottom teeth, the bottom gums. He said it got loosened in the Dricus du Plessis fight. It was really weak, and therefore it snapped. Now, look, by no means is this win illegitimate for Khamzat. I mean, by no means. I mean, Khamzat was clearly getting the better of this exchange. He was out grappling Whittaker, but again, when you look at the choke itself, Whittaker, in theory, should have survived this. Again, because Khamzat did not fully have his back. There was nothing stopping him from just turning in, but again, Whittaker was done the second he got that arm across because his teeth broke. So, I mean, yeah, this leaves us a lot of unanswered questions. If Whittaker's jaw was completely fine, he probably shouldn't have gotten tapped to this. I mean, it's just that simple. He definitely would have felt it. It wouldn't have been good. But again, without fully securing the back, Whittaker could have turned into him and he would have survived. Now, would have Khamzat choked him again after that? I mean, maybe. But what if he survived the round? I mean, could have Khamzat kept up this pace over 5 rounds? I don't know. It's tough to say. The pace of this fight, look, it was high, but it wasn't nearly as high as the Usman fight or the Kevin Holland fight. Both of those fights, Khamzat was clearly sprinting. You know, especially the Usman fight, Khamzat was frantically mat returning Usman over and over and over again. It wasn't the same here. Khamzat was, honest to God, apart from the double legs, he was making Whittaker work harder than he was. He was making Whittaker carry his weight. He was just kind of maintaining the position and making Whittaker carry him. So, look, Again, I don't know, though. It's a big question mark. To me, the one area that Khamzat was outclassed in this matchup, it was in the striking. Now, offensively, Khamzat is a very dangerous striker, but I think defensively, he leaves a lot to be desired, and I think Whittaker would have had a massive advantage there. Now, again, we didn't even see a second of it in this fight, but if Whittaker survived this round, if he survived the second round, and then we ended up seeing them on the feet for prolonged periods of time. I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, has Khamzat made improvements in that area? I mean, we're not going to know, but the only thing we know objectively is that Whittaker shouldn't have gotten choked here. He should have been able to turn into him, and he should have been able to survive. Now, Khamzat hadn't done a massive amount of damage from on top, but again, I don't know if Whittaker would have been able to stop the double legs unless he was able to keep the fight out in the open. That would have been the one area where he could have sprawled and avoided the takedown. But up against the fence with shots this low, there was nothing he was going to do about it. So look, if I had to just put my chips on one side or the other, I think Khamzat would have won regardless. I think he did a much better job managing his cardio in this fight. I think he did a much better job. He wasn't sprinting. The 2 double legs he shot, okay, that was an all-out just sprint, one big explosion. But then apart from that, he was making Whittaker work harder than he was, and in theory, I think he probably could have kept this up over 5 rounds, but, again, it's interesting because there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and now, I mean, look, Khamzat, he's up next for a title shot. I mean, maybe not up next, maybe Strickland will fight Duplessis next, but then it's going to be Khamzat. It's going to be, so, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. There's still so many questions left to be answered. Can he do this to Dricus Duplessis? I don't know. Can he do it to Sean Strickland? I think that's probably going to be more likely. But, I mean, I don't know. This fight in particular, look, it brought Khamzat's hype back. And honestly, these unanswered questions left due to the circumstances, honestly, make everything just a little bit more interesting, I think.